Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, folks. I'm so excited to have you here at Holding Space, Melinda Sapone, if you're on Substack. And everyone needs you always to do your inner work. If you're on Spotify or if you're now on YouTube, we're here. And I'm just really here to kind of manifest now this being the warehouse for the You Are Not Broken University. And I'll talk about that in the recap. The post today is just radical responsibility and the emergent self and using the tool of reprogramming emotional suppression. This radical responsibility is to address the toxic messages you've been programmed by and now send yourself on a loop subconsciously. And it's there in all of us. Emotional suppression is really at its core. It's one of what I call one of the bad tools. So, welcome back, and I'm going to give us a recap of the bad tools. Holding space, the warehouse for all the You Are Not Broken curriculum. You may be able to see the link for the You Are Not Broken Break Free from the Fixing Yourself mindset in the show notes on Spotify or in the text. I really encourage you to look at that as the first introduction to the narrative stage of healing from the toolbox approach. And we're healing in phases. And in this warehouse here and holding space, and yeah, everyone needs you always, we acknowledge the core human right that is so often overlooked, the right to democratize your mental health and have choices that empower you, empower your access to internal stability rather than label it with diagnostic codes that demand treatment by a covered provider. Now, I am a covered provider. I'm a licensed and clinical trauma therapist of 20 years come this 2026. And even I could not find a way to choose the right options to heal the complexity of traumas I was holding. Why? Labels. The diagnostic labels match the treatment I could gain weight with or use cognitive behavioral therapy to move out of depression loops when traumatic accidents set me back to broken. However, they could not remember traumas for me or access the feelings that were linked to memories of my real story. They could not tell me trauma was held in my perineum and the muscles of my hips, and that yoga for exercise would not help, but yoga to feel more of my somatic self, the story of my body would. These easy to digest story of the diagnostic label, these these stories in the labels, they set me back 2 decades because they're flat. They're a label and not the work. And diagnostic labels cannot diagnose your unique pattern of stress responses or the way you have never freed yourself from their hold and remain in survival mode. That's why the toolbox approach curriculum matters. That is why this space is building it and holding space for the material for You Are Not Broken. And we don't know, guys, how much longer the traditional structure of healthcare is going to hold space for us. So we have to democratize mental health, see and organize your unique pathway to healing so that you can empower yourself with the tools of self-help and seek help from providers and other things, but perhaps more minimally because as they become less reliable, as not all of us have easy access to health insurance or the governmental structures that hold space for them are not as organized as we hoped, we can be organized. Now, healing in phases that organize your inner work is important because we aim to free ourselves from instability, and you can never do that with a disembodied and disorganized approach. The decision to start something always feels good. The beginning of that intention to finish the new self help book, return to or start therapy, and finally balance your work life, or so many other beginnings to care about yourself, are micro moves and they feel hopeful. However, no person is restructured in a move. And that is what we are seeking. A way you have been living doesn't match with that inner voice that knows there is more authenticity and you are holding it back. It's in one area or another or several. You've settled, hidden, or numbed it if you don't feel it. Be brave and feel it. Take radical responsibility to reprogram the bad tools we learn to process our lives with repression, suppression, and dissociation. Those are the bad tools. These tools come from a rapid advancement in the prefrontal cortex that outdates the threats we are prepared to face in life. Once food, shelter, and physical safety became more and more the norm, the relational threats of abandonment, betrayal, neglect, enmeshment, manipulation, control, abuse, intimidation, and bullying became highly dangerous. The threat detection system needed a buffer from the information pouring in and created suppression, and dissociation. This is the instability in all of us. The data you have access to about your life was collected with bad tools and it's fragmented. We need to heal through the use of reprocessing tools. We also need to be in reprogramming ourselves to lift emotional suppression. When we allow ourselves to feel and then regulate these feelings, we go from fragmented data to massively intact and much more accurate data for our lives. Let's dig into the post for today. I have been developing workshops for the future You Are Not Broken University, which aims to have the phases of healing as its structure with the toolbox approach, core curriculum, and various tracks that form therapy intensives as the classrooms. As we start the post, I will provide a sample workshop participants' experience by combining them into one sample of someone beginning to work on the suppression of their emotions as a bad tool that needed reprogramming. And we use this combination so to protect everybody's confidentiality, but these are real people doing the work. And so I'm going to start today with the example of what I call the sad child. And here's our workshop participant example. I want to ask a question about why my friends cannot understand me, but I know now from the workshop that I have to face my own instability. So I worked with my parts and how you talked about my feeling of non belonging, and I remembered something. When I was a kid, I was so convinced that no one could want me if I were a sad child that I constricted my stomach a lot. I think it triggered a stress response in me like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. These were the ones talked about in the workshop. Maybe it was flee. He says, I'm Italian. You can't not eat. So I ate over the feeling. He says, over the years, I became a master of not feeling it. I played sports, and whenever I felt like the negativity of the teasing that was accepted as part of team life went too far, I would play and practice harder. He says, I really suffered when we lost. I knew it was abnormal to feel so sad. I think I just wanted to feel the joy of our team as my own somehow, and I never could. I needed baseball to escape something. I realize now it was my family dynamics. Repressed sadness is my lack of love and compassion for myself now. The belief no one would want me if I were sad became both an injury and a huge block. Yeah, guys, this is really a combination of all people really working on stuff and uncovering the suppression. And suppressed sadness is a really common one. I have that myself, and I've used the tools on it just to so much profoundly befriend it. In this workshop, we began to use tools for relational healing, a phase in the toolbox approach that is largely about using this tool of reprogramming emotional suppression. One of them is still going on this month. You can click on that link in Substack or the Spotify show notes. You can also look at available dates and keep posted on the main page of that workshop site. It's like You Are Not Broken workshops. We are focusing on facing our instability this past 4 weeks instead of looking outward to other things. We are recognizing that the use of emotional repression needs reprogramming. This means accessing and permitting yourself to access all the parts of yourself, not just the ones that manage your life or put out fires, and regulating those in exile through a skilled conversation that understands them curiously without a fix it mentality. When we regulate parts holding dysregulated and underprocessed emotions and thoughts, they become integrated into you. You don't have to fix. There's nothing bad in there. We notice ourselves for the first time, and it doesn't matter who wants you or who doesn't, because you want to have this conversation with yourself again and soon and over and over. Now, last week we taught the tool of internal family systems here and in the workshop, and you can see it in this post. I included the link from last week here. This week, using the anonymous workshop combination participants above, we explored reprogramming emotional suppression. So, first, before we dig into that example, I want to speak a little bit about the fix your feelings trap. Many of us are getting stuck in wanting to find an answer and wanting to get rid of the feelings we are having. We want to fix this disappointment we are having with our friends, our partners, and our parents. We cope with the pressure, invisibility, resentment, and insecurity at our jobs or inside of ourselves by suppressing it and going outward to something outside the origin, our internal world, for a resolution. Wanting to go outward for an inward feeling is a cognitive error that no one I have ever met, and I've met with 2,000 people in 20 years, is not susceptible to because it doesn't seem unintelligent. And yet it is emotionally, somatically, and spiritually a dead end, or kind of dumb as rocks, because it uses neuroplasticity, our neurological capacity, like it were all in our head, and it's just not. Now, I mentioned the polyvagal system last week, and again, I would really encourage you to go over that post. The emergent self mentioned in the title of this post takes responsibility for reprogramming and builds the house, right? Not just up here, the house for their parts of self, their internal family, based on a structure of relatedness and functionality rather than rigid roles and dysfunctionality. We don't want to just rigidly manage our lives. This is just like some families unintentionally raised us in. We live in a dysfunction that is similar to dysfunction that can be found in families, but we can work with our internal family. This means the emergent self, it sees negative neuroplasticity or old programming as what we might call the preformed self and what creates your pain. So the first step is right now, calling on an emergent self to look inward and see preformed self in pain, held in exiled parts as separate and in need of help. We are always running outward due to a program we are on called emotional outsourcing with the goal of suppression. So that's why we need an emergent self and a better inner conversation. So just, you know, that went kind of a little fast. So I'm just going to kind of hold space for those who are like, wait, what's the emergent self again? The emergent self is not a part, it's the center of awareness that arises when we are grounded, curious, and compassionate. It's the observer in us that can look inward without judgment and bear witness and begin to regulate, reparent, and reorganize the internal system. Remember what I said, like dysfunctional family. Yeah, like you didn't get everything from your siblings, you didn't get everything from your parents, but you can reparent, you can regulate, you can reorganize in your internal family. When emotional suppression is present, it often comes from a preformed self, from disorganization, a constellation of parts that learned to suppress feelings to stay safe, accepted, or in control. These parts may have served us well in chaotic or invalidating environments, but they now limit our access to authentic emotional data. When you stop now through reading or listening to this, you actually choose to move into an emergent self that looks at suppression and what it is doing to your whole self integration. So, let's get to the work. Inward conversation for reprogramming suppression. This tool invites the emergent self to gently approach the preformed self and begin a new kind of dialogue, one that allows suppressed emotions to be witnessed, regulated, and reintegrated. In the workshop participant example, he was constricting his stomach to stop feeling the feeling of sadness. He thought that if he were a sad child, no one would want him. This tool is demonstrated with this example. It's a really great one, and I thank all my workshop participants over the weeks for giving me the data to provide this real person example. So we begin with step one, notice the suppression. And you begin just by asking, like, is there a part of me that feels numb, flat, or shut down? And using this example, we would say, like, yes. I was feeling non-belonging and shut down. The memory of not wanting to feel this way was in my stomach again when I was thinking about my friends, um, and I couldn't really feel the shutdown. What emotions might be just underneath the surface? Okay, well, using this example, we might say, I'm angry at male friendship and how it is. No one cares. It's all surface. I'm getting older. It's hard to hang out and feel part of things. I feel like I'm left behind somehow. And like that memory, that memory of sadness in my stomach, like I just want to win a game or something to feel better, but it's not going to happen. So this is a really good example to use on answering those first two questions. Is there a part of me that feels numb, flat, or shut down? What emotions might be just beneath the surface? And then you let the emergent self observe without pushing. Suppression often hides fear, grief, or shame. So you let yourself have, in this case, a little bit of grief and feeling the non-belonging. This participant says, I have grief and non-belonging and feel so afraid that I have no partner and no sense of real friendship. And if I met someone, they would just see it all too eventually. So they're really feeling that. They're letting it come up. Step two, invite the suppressing part to speak. So the questions here are, what are you afraid would happen if I felt this emotion? Now, using the example, I'm just going to answer as if I was this example person. I feel like I need to cry, but what if that makes it worse and I go into depression and I can't get out of it? I want the release, but I'm scared it makes me break or something and I won't be the same, which sounds dumb because I'm really sad and just hiding it and I don't want to be that way really. Okay, so what are you afraid it would happen if you felt that emotion? And oftentimes you'll feel like it's just kind of like looping, it's mental looping. How long have you been doing this job of keeping things quiet? So you kind of ask this part, how long have you been doing this? And if I were this workshop example, I would say, my whole life. This is ridiculous. I have to let this out and be healthy and in touch. Any partner would want that from me. That's a big one. We often realize like the way we're feeling and maybe relationships aren't working. It's like, yeah, no, no, duh. Because if you are not going to feel it, then it's going to throw somebody else off too, even if they don't know the exact reasons. And this participant, I think, would say, like, I don't know why I think this. It's so outdated in his mind, and he can see it now, right? So these questions really just help you not overthink, ruminate, or dwell, but really build trust and unblend from the part from like this wholeness that you have inside you to have a rich conversation. Now, step three, we regulate with compassion. This is when you might use a little somatics and use breath, grounding, or imagery to help the system feel safe. So you might just put a hand on your below your belly button and then one over your heart. Take a full breath all the way up so you feel it pass through this hand and up to the top of your head and just say, like, I'm here now. You don't have to carry this alone. Be there for yourself. You can also say to this part, you were trying to protect me and I see that. Just like holding it back. I see that it was just trying to protect me from something I thought would ruin me. And this is where reprogramming begins when the part realizes it's not alone and doesn't have to suppress anymore, and it's got you. It's got a more whole and stable you. Step four is to receive better internal data. As repression softens, you get more emotional information and everything becomes clearer. So for this participant, I would say, like, he's realizing he feels sad because he wanted a connection, and he feels angry because he felt powerless. This data is less fragmented, more usable, and leads to aligned action. Now, in conclusion, guys, I really want you to go slow. This work is for you first. Reprogramming emotional suppression is not about rushing into expression or providing progress. It's about gently turning inward, allowing the emergent self to witness and regulate what was once suppressed. This process begins quietly, internally, and most importantly, for you. It's natural to want to share your insights or emotional breakthroughs with others. But be mindful, the urge to immediately seek validation or understanding can slide into emotional outsourcing, placing your inner work into someone else's hands, hoping they'll affirm it, hold it, or respond in a way that makes it feel real. This can unintentionally become a demand or lead to oversharing with someone who may not be emotionally receptive or safe. So, this work's got to be for you. Instead, give yourself the gift of internal validation. Let your system feel the reward of simply being with what's true. No one is measuring your progress but you. You deserve to feel your feelings, to witness your own healing, and to move at a pace that honors your nervous system and your story. Go slow. This work is for you first. Now, a note, you can still catch the workshop. It's best found in the show notes, but you can always go over to meetup.com and look for You Are Not Broken or Facing Your Instability is the name of the workshop. There's a link for the workshop. There's a link for the main page in this article. These are free for a very limited time before we head over to Patreon curriculum courses soon. I'm not going to overwhelm you and leave you the link right now. I really want you guys to take your time. And as always, the book You Are Not Broken, which introduces the toolbox approach and the phases of healing, is here in the links. The author's website has a lot of goodies on it for free. There's a free workbook. Just look at all the stuff linked up in this article. And it does support me as an author. I am a therapist as my full-time job. That's where I get most of my income. But I am looking to make a change. I am looking to democratize mental health. So if you do decide to pay for some of these materials, you will be supporting something pretty deep and pretty profound. Heal on, everybody.